Good morning, everyone. It is 9:15 right now. Welcome back to the program. Lou and Jackie here, along with our good friend Sheree Clark from Fork in the Road. And, of course, this time of year, Jackie, tell us about all the great things that are going on in town. And how many times during the week do you mention farmers markets?
Oh, regular, daily basis.
And you know what they're loaded with? Produce. Yeah, but we are coming down to the end of the summer, which means the produce numbers are going to start to dwindle just a little bit, Jackie.
And we're kind of continuing the discussion on how to extend those items that we love so much. And this is something you've talked about before, and even it convinced me that I needed to have one of these bad boys in my kitchen. Not of this extent. This is like the Mercedes-Benz of dehydrators, and that's what we're talking about today. But good morning, Sheree, from Fork in the Road. So what are we talking about today? Obviously dehydration, but how is that really helping us to preserve these wonderful items that we get at farmers markets?
Well, let me tell you, the reason that we're doing this is because of this gentleman right here. Last week on the segment, you said I had these beautiful little tomatoes,
which were delicious. What were they called again?
They call them Tiny Toms,
okay.
And they're really sweet and they're just fabulous. Okay, so then you said, well, what would happen if we dried them? And I said, I don't know. So I tried it.
And those aren't craisins. Those are dried little cherry tomatoes.
And so you owe it to yourself and to the viewing audience to see what happened when you gave me this inspiration.
Okay, so here they are. Now, how long did it take you to dry these? Because you do.
Did you slice them or did you do them whole?
I put them in their whole, and then there were a few of them that weren't shrinking. So I just pierced them with a cake tester. Just a little thing just to get so that they would get some air in there.
Right.
And they turned out phenomenally.
Here we go, before and after here.
Yep. They're great. I used some of them in salad,
okay.
And what I do with them is I let them sit in the salad dressing so they kind of macerate in there, and then they get a little bit softer, and then they don't stick to your teeth quite as much, so they're delicious.
It really has the consistency of a raisin,
yep.
And for a second I'm expecting to have a real sweet
kind
raisin
of a sweet taste, yeah.
And then tomato just bathes your tongue.
Yes.
Now, if you wanted to use them, maybe this winter and something, could you soak them, as you were mentioning, in salad dressing, but water or something to kind of get them back to that original form?
That is really good.
Yes.
It's nice and potent, too.
Yeah, exactly. So in any recipe that calls for sun-dried tomatoes, I would use those as a replacement, and it's going to be a really strong pop. So thank you.
Yo, no, good idea. Now I know what I'm doing with my cherry tomatoes. Finally start popping.
Oh, that's a lot of flavor.
Yes.
Yeah, tons of flavor. Yeah, so you don't need a whole lot of these on a salad.
No, you definitely don't. No, just a little cute little sprinkle, and it's really, really delicious. So.
Unbelievable. That's a lot of flavor. So let's talk about the process. As we said, they don't all look like this, but this is one of the better ones that you can get. Of why do you dehydrate? Are you still allowed to dehydrate since you are raw in your dietary decisions? But what's the process and why is this good for you?
Well, a dehydrator is different from an oven, where an oven gets to a really high heat and it's dry, still air. And that's the way it cooks. A dehydrator is moving air. The concept is that it's lower heat, moving air that just basically removes the water or the fluids from fruits and vegetables. So it's different than a different process.
You're just extracting the moisture.
Precisely. What that does from a health standpoint is it preserves the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and so forth. I dehydrate typically at 105 degrees or less to preserve all of those things.
Okay.
But other times, sometimes that's not my criteria. That's not always my reason. The other reason might be that it's just simply more efficient, or that it's something that I can do. I won't leave an oven on when I leave my house, but I would leave the dehydrator going. So I leave the dehydrator going. You asked about the tomatoes. I let them go a little over 24 hours. And I probably could have done less. I probably could have done more. I liked that consistency, so that's why I stopped. So other things that you could do with the dehydrator would be things like right now we've got an abundance of fresh herbs.
Right.
This is rosemary, which is a great, and I've made you rosemary lemonade.
Right.
So what I do with rosemary is I just simply strip the leaves, see, like this? So they come out like that. And then when I dehydrate them, then this is what they look like when they're complete. They're just dry. You can see what the difference is between the two. So here's the fresh rosemary.
So in the spice jar, when you're getting the dried stuff they're the whole leaf. I didn't think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was shredded of some sort.
And now if you look at it closely at the two things, you can see the difference. So you can see why And they just shrink because all of the fluids have come out of the rosemary. That's what happens.
How about that? I didn't realize that. That's exactly what that was.
And you can smell this.
I was gonna say,
Over
as soon
here.
as you took that down, it's like, ooh, man,
Yeah.
you can smell that.
And so what happens, remember, the difference when you're cooking between using fresh herbs and dried is that dried is more concentrated, because think about this. See how large this is and how small that is? What's going to happen is 1 tablespoon of this, you could get away with using 1 teaspoon of the dried in a recipe. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we've talked about preservatives and things that we can, preserving like tomatoes, preserving spices. Let's talk about cooking in the dehydrator.
Okay.
I made you something pretty fancy. So what I did, you've got a dessert sushi here today. So the way I started was with making a fruit leather. And we know what fruit leathers are. We get them for the kids in the store.
Roll-ups.
Roll-ups, exactly. If you read the label, fruit leathers are not always that really that healthy. This is what a homemade fruit leather looks like. It's it's cost effective. I use fresh blueberries, I use fresh banana, and a little bit of coconut oil to keep it pliable.
So you just made a paste?
Yeah, a batter.
A batter?
Yep, I did it in the blender. I dumped it on there. I smoothed it out with an offset spatula, which looks like the thing that when you're doing a sidewalk or laying
Like a
cement.
trowel?
Yeah, exactly. It looks just like a trowel. And so that's how that's made. Dehydrated maybe 8 hours. Jackie, you've got a deconstructed version of the dessert sushi. So you've got your roll up on your left, and then on the right is with the equivalent of rice. So that is macadamia nuts, a little bit of honey, and some dried coconut.
Really?
Yep. Right in front of that is just simply some fresh pineapple and then some sliced banana. So I took those fresh ingredients, I created a dipping sauce. So you see what I'm doing. I'm making it just like a sushi. So the nori wrap has been replaced by the fruit leather. The rice has been replaced by the macadamia mixture. And instead of a soy sauce, I've got a combination of coconut aminos, orange juice, lime juice, and fresh grated ginger. So now, the crescendo, it's up to you, Lou.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Jackie too. So
Yes, indeed. So what I did was, you can eat that with a
These are so
chopstick,
good.
but to be kind, I thought maybe
Do a little dunk.
Yep, the
Do a
dunk. You're
dunk.
going to love that dunkin'. So what I thought I would do would be to serve it on a toothpick, so that it's a little bit easier to eat. Those flavors come together.
good.
Yes, I love this. It's my favorite dessert to make, and it's so
Well, it's fun.
and it's fun, it's elegant. The thing that I like to do differently, and I would have done today, I'll tell you, because it's prettier, is I like to include fresh mango, but the mangoes at the store today, I just didn't like how they looked. And
Okay.
rather than use a mango, even though it would be prettier, I was going for the taste. So think about that. The bright pop of orange. Papaya would be another thing, because there's a theme going on here. The inside is tropical fruits. So we've got coconut, pineapple, banana, and then the other flavors for the dipping sauce just really bring it all
You know what
together.
this tastes like? You're not gonna like me for this. It kind of tastes like a Mounds bar.
Oh my goodness. Oh, because of the coconut.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Coconut, yeah.
And the
but-
consistency, yeah.
This
Yeah.
consistency is very much like what you would consider Mounds bar, but
Yep.
That is really good.
better for you and absolutely delicious, and something fun for the kids if you're wanting an after-school snack.
Yes.
Get them involved. But just one of the things I had to learn from, because I do dehydrate and I absolutely love it. It takes time.
Yes.
It's not one of those. It's like, oh, kids are going to be home in half an hour. Let's make some fruit leather. You have to prepare yourself and do a little time in the kitchen.
Yep, but here's the good part. It takes time for the machine to work, but it doesn't take time for you to work. Me throwing the batter ingredients into the blender was all of literally 4 minutes. Dump it out, spread it, and I go away for 8 hours, and when I come back, it's done.
So you do it first thing in the morning, and then by the time you get done running around all day, chances are
It's
it'll be
done.
done.
And the best news is you can't burn it. So you're just dehydrating it.
But can you go too far? Because when I'm doing like banana chips or something like that, I'm always, because I think we all have personal
Yeah.
Do you like them
favorites.
pliable or do you like them crunchy?
I like them crunchy, so I
Okay.
let them go a little bit longer than maybe a cookbook or what you would recommend.
Right.
So you want to look, but could they ever go too far?
You can, yes, fruit leather you can go too far because if you dry it too much, then it cracks.
Okay.
Part of the reason I put coconut oil in there is to do a little insurance on that in case I forget or I'm out and I don't get back in time. But the other thing that you can remember is that it won't ruin it from the standpoint of it's like a burnt turkey. You can't eat. It's not
Right.
edible. It's just the consistency. It wouldn't be able to roll. Sometimes you can save it. Sometimes you could spray just simply water or maybe a little apple juice, or depending on it, whether it's a sweet or savory dish, you can spray it on there and put it back in briefly and sometimes
Rehydrate it?
Rehydrate. Not always.
Okay.
But once in a while that works. So.
Now, what about apples too? This time of year, people are starting to gather more
I
apples.
love apple chips are great. So you just slice your apples. You can do them with or without the skin. I typically will take the skin off depending on how big the apple is, and then just put that in the dehydrator and let it go. And apple chips are great. Sprinkle a little cinnamon on there. It doesn't need a sweetener typically.
Perfect. All right.
Wonderful.
People have any other questions about what we're talking about here today? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, you could visit my website at fork-road.com or drop me an email at info@fork-road.com. And as you can see, I take suggestions from people, even you, Lou.
So people must not have written to you in the past week. So,
You
so
got
write
it.
Sheree is what she said. Please write Sheree. So any more of my bird-brained ideas. Well, those are really good. I'm doing that at home. No
Excellent.
question about it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Sheree.
It is 9:25.